This is a one-of-a-kind bowl made from Staghorn Sumac, also known as Rhus typhina. What makes this piece special is its raw, unpredictable character. The deep contrasts, the natural voids, and the grain that almost looks alive. And this exact bowl is already available on our website. If you're new here, welcome. Let me show you how this piece came to life. Before the piece ever reaches the lathe, the first step is shaping it down to its rough form. At this stage, it's all about removing excess material and getting closer to the shape hidden inside the wood. With Staghorn Sumac like this, every cut matters because you never really know what's waiting beneath the surface. The goal here isn't perfection, it's control. Getting the piece balanced, reducing weight, and preparing it for the lathe, where the real transformation begins. Once the piece is mounted on the lathe, the first goal is to bring it into balance. At this stage, everything is still rough, so I begin by shaping it into a clean cylinder. This creates a stable starting point, something I can actually work with. From here, the initial idea of the bowl starts to form, but with wood like this, the plan rarely stays the same. The grain, the voids, the natural edge, they all start to guide the shape in their own way. So instead of forcing a design, I let the piece evolve one cut at a time. As the shape starts to come together, this is usually the point where the piece begins to reveal its character. Every curve, every detail, slowly finding its place. And this is also the moment where you can start to imagine it in your own space, whether as a functional piece or something that simply stands out on its own. Because once it's finished, there won't be another one like it. As the form becomes more defined, the details start to stand out even more. The contrast in the wood, the natural imperfections, they're no longer something to hide. In fact, my goal here is the opposite, to shape them in a way that makes them stand out, to give those voids and irregularities a purpose, so they become the most interesting part of the piece, because that's where the character really lives. It's not just about how it looks, it's about the feeling it carries. Something shaped by nature and refined by hand. And once it's finished, it becomes more than just an object. It becomes a piece you keep or pass on. With the basic shape now in place, I'll still come back and refine it later, especially as the grain and natural features begin to guide the final form. Because with wood like this, the original idea is just a starting point. The final shape always evolves along the way. But before I continue shaping the upper part, I move to the bottom of the bowl. This is where the piece gains its foundation. A subtle foot that lifts it just enough to give it balance and a lighter visual presence. It's a small detail, but it completely changes how the bowl sits and how it's perceived as a finished piece. Everything needs to feel stable, intentional, and visually clean. So I take my time here, refining the base, adjusting the proportions, and making sure every transition feels natural and balanced. There's something about this stage that often goes unnoticed, but it plays a huge role in how the final piece feels. Not just how it looks on camera, but how it actually lives in a space. Because pieces like this aren't just made to be seen, they're made to be placed somewhere to become part of someone's home. And this is usually the moment where you can start to picture that. Where would it sit? On a table? A shelf? Maybe as a centerpiece? Or maybe it's something you'd use every day. That's the beauty of it. It can be both functional and expressive at the same time. As I continue refining the base, I also begin to introduce a few subtle details. Nothing too aggressive, just small elements that add depth without taking away from the natural character of the wood. Because the goal is never to overpower the material, but to work with it, to let the grain, the imperfections, and the natural edge remain the focus. At the same time, I prepare a dedicated space in the center of the base, a small detail that will only be completed at the very end. This is where the Pipejawood coin will be placed as a final signature, a quiet mark, but one that gives the piece its identity. Because in the end, it's not just about shaping wood, it's about creating something that carries a story, something that feels considered, intentional, and complete. And now that the form is fully defined, it's time to move on to the next stage, smoothing the surface, refining every curve, and bringing out the full depth of the wood. This is where everything starts to come together. So let's move on to sanding. As the sanding begins, the entire piece starts to shift in a more subtle way. The sharpness left by the tools slowly disappears, and the surface becomes softer, more refined with every pass. It's a gradual process, but this is where the wood really begins to open up. The patterns become clearer, the transitions feel smoother, and the overall form starts to feel more complete. There's a certain calm to this stage. Nothing dramatic is happening, but every small adjustment brings the piece closer to its final form. And this is also the point where you start to notice the details you might have missed before. The way the grain flows around the shape, the depth in the darker lines, the contrast that gives the piece its identity. Everything begins to connect. Because once the finish is applied, this is exactly what will stand out. So the more attention it gets here, the more the piece will reveal in the end. Now it's time to bring the surface to life. As I apply the finish, the transformation is immediate. The colors deepen, the contrast becomes richer, and the grain reveals its full depth. This is where everything truly comes together. For this piece, I'm using our own blend of natural oils and wax, a finish designed to protect the wood while enhancing its natural character without taking away from its raw, organic feel. It creates a smooth, tactile surface while still allowing the wood to breathe and feel alive. And what I like most about it is how it brings out every detail we've worked so hard to preserve. From the fine grain to the deeper lines and natural imperfections. If you're interested, this finish is also available on our website, so you can use the same treatment on your own pieces. But here, it's the final step that reveals the true character of this bowl. With the outside complete, I can finally turn my focus to the inside of the bowl. This is where the piece really starts to open up. Slowly, removing material, following the curve, and shaping the space that will define how the bowl is actually used. It's a different kind of process compared to the outside. Less about the overall form and more about balance, depth, and proportion. At the same time, I'm working to mirror the shape from the outside, keeping the wall thickness as even as possible throughout the entire piece. Because that balance isn't just about aesthetics, it allows the wood to move naturally over time, reducing stress and helping the piece age the way it should. And as the inside takes shape, you can really start to see how interesting this piece of wood is. Right through the center runs a darker, aged core, almost like a natural line drawn through the bowl. And around it, the healthier wood wraps itself in flowing layers, creating a contrast that feels both raw and beautifully balanced. It's not something you could ever design on purpose. It only happens like this in nature. And that's what gives this piece its character. Every cut reveals something new. Sometimes expected, sometimes not. But that's part of what makes each piece unique. There's no exact plan to follow, just a direction and a constant adjustment along the way. And this is also the stage where I'd be curious to hear from you. When it comes to pieces like this, what do you personally prefer? Do you enjoy bowls like this? Or are you more drawn to vases? Or maybe something completely different? Let me know in the comments. I'd really like to hear what you enjoy the most. Because in the end, every piece I make is not just about the process, but also about how it connects with the people who see it and maybe one day own it. With the shaping complete, I move on to refining the inside of the bowl. Just like on the outside, this stage is all about smoothing the surface, removing any remaining marks, and bringing every curve into balance. It's a slower, more controlled process where each pass makes a subtle difference. The surface gradually becomes softer, more consistent, and more refined to the touch. And this is where the form truly settles, everything coming together into a clean, continuous shape. Now it's time for the final step. As the finish is applied, the transformation is immediate, the tones deepen, the contrast becomes richer, and the grain reveals its full depth. For this piece, I'm using our own blend of carnauba wax and tung oil, two completely natural ingredients, both safe for food contact and chosen to protect the wood while enhancing its natural beauty. The oil nourishes the wood from within, while the wax creates a smooth, protective surface, giving the bowl a warm, refined feel, while still keeping its natural character. And this is the moment where everything truly comes to life. With the finish complete, it's time for the final detail. The moment where the piece is quietly signed, I place the Pipejawood coin into the base, a small element, but one that marks the bowl as complete. It's a subtle detail, but it represents everything that went into this piece. From a raw, imperfect section of wood to something shaped, refined, and brought to life by hand. To bring everything to its final form, I gently polish the surface, allowing the depths of the grain to stand out even more. The contrast becomes richer, the surface smoother, and the entire piece gains a soft, natural glow. Every curve, every detail, now fully revealed. And this is the final result. A one-of-a-kind bowl made from Staghorn Sumac, with its deep aged core running through the center, surrounded by living wood that wraps around it in natural flowing layers. It's not something that can be planned or repeated. It's a moment captured in wood and shaped into something you can hold, use, or simply display. And this exact piece is available right now. If you can imagine it, in your space, on a table, a shelf, or as a centerpiece, you can find it through the link shown in the top right corner of this video or in the description below. Thank you for being part of the process and for taking the time to watch this piece come to life. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who appreciates handcrafted work. There's always another piece waiting and another story to tell.